Are you surviving or are you thriving? We're pretty sure most of you out there are surviving. If that's you, we've got a workshop. We've got a 5-pillar approach to help you improve your health, starting off with movement, sleep, nutrition, stress, and relationships. If you can get those 5 things in place, there's a good chance you'll be thriving soon. First place to start is our questionnaire. We've got a free questionnaire that we encourage you to fill out today, and it'll give you a score. It will tell you whether you are surviving or whether you're thriving. Our first workshop is going to be on Sunday, the 6th of April. We'd love to see you there. It starts prompt 8:30 in the morning. It's going to be a full day of testing, learning, experiencing. It's going to be hosted out of our Better facility in London, Marylebone. So if you can get there on Sunday, the 6th of April, please book now. We've got a special discount as well, half price for our first workshop, so only £100 for so much value. We really think it's a really great product. Today, we're welcoming Pele Zac. He is an ex-personal trainer and health and wellness coach. We're going to explore that concept pretty early in the episode here, and the reason he's on is because he's doing things a little differently. He has a 4-pillar approach to his health and wellness philosophy, and it's probably a great time to bring you straight in here, rather than me describe it to the audience. Pele, welcome. Tell us about your 4-pillar philosophy.
Firstly, thanks for having me. Excited to be here in London, ready for a good discussion. So yeah, the 4-pillar philosophy is essentially my take on building well-rounded health. So movement is pillar number 1, and we can go through kind of different pillars under the pillars, as it were. So movement, nutrition, restoration, and mindset. And from my perspective, it's very easy for us to put majority of our time and effort and resource into one of those pillars, maybe 2 of those pillars, forgetting that we can't really make up for a lack of one with an increase in another. So within the movement pillar, we've got a few categories. The first one is strength training, which for me is paramount. And we can obviously touch on the ways that I personally advise my clients to implement these things into their life. But strength training, some form of cardio for sure. And then what I call flow, which could be stability work, mobility, yoga, whatever you enjoy, but something that's quite restorative, looking at joint health and not so intense. And again, from my viewpoint and 12 plus years of coaching clients, if these 3 areas are nailed with a structured focus and we can kind of build them progressively week to week, month to month, year to year, you're reducing not only massive chance of injury, but also building well-rounded strength, overall fitness, cardiovascular health, and everything else in between. Pillar number 2 is nutrition, which I think is a very nuanced area within our space that people often, I think, overcomplicate and make it out as this beast that we have to perfect before we can even initiate kind of making positive changes. But with nutrition comes energy balance, so managing calories depending on your current goals, looking at your protein. And once we get the kind of basics ticked off, supplementation, looking at micros and macros, but again, like as we'll go through, is just breaking things down into the really immediate wins of what can I do right now, as opposed to getting your ducks in a row and starting in months or potentially years, or maybe never starting. 3rd pillar, these are no particular order, by the way, restoration. So looking at sleep and also pockets of white space within our days and weeks that aren't necessarily me in bed having an 8-hour kip, but just looking at areas of life we can implement some white space and some restorative work through mindfulness, breathwork practices, improving quality and quantity of sleep through different tools that we can kind of go through and strategies. And last but not least is mindset, potentially the most important because it underpins a lot of what we've spoken about already. But I think having time solo, so solitude, is super important for reflection, for planning, and to allow our thoughts to come to the forefront and process what's getting in the way, what are the triggers, what's going well in life, which areas require improvement, and not being at one with ourselves in a cliche way, but understanding that the home that we have from day 1 till day X in the future is our mind and body. And if we aren't spending time solo to really understand that and grasp the concepts that we live by, conscious or unconscious, it's hard to progress. Within that mindset pillar, I think self-empowerment is really important. So learning, and that could be within areas of health and fitness or any other hobby or topic that you're interested in, but spending time becoming more knowledgeable in areas. And I think it's very empowering to learn and to listen, ask and read articles, podcasts, YouTube conversations that inspire you to go out there and keep learning particular topics. And then community, which fits into all 4 pillars, but I'd put it under mindset most, because for me, I think being the architect of your environment is paramount for success. And if we can pick ourselves up from wherever we are and put ourselves in the right environment where all of these things are slightly more normal and accepted, everything becomes 10 times easier. So those are the 4 pillars. Each of them have a few categories. And depending on where clients are on the current journey, we can look at attacking certain categories under those 4 different pillars.
I guess the opposite of community is isolation. And with isolation comes loneliness. With loneliness comes health problems. Mm-hmm. So that makes a lot of sense why you see that as such an important sub-pillar within mindset. Sure. Before we go into that, because I know that that's definitely part of our future conversation here today, I want to explore this concept of you being an ex-personal trainer, because ultimately that is where you started. Why did you become disillusioned with the personal training industry and you delivering personal training?
Great question. So after my my time in Spain playing football, which we can touch on potentially, came home, had a bit of a rough period in London, and then I didn't really even know what personal training was. I'd always had coaches from being an athlete, but that was S&C. It wasn't about enjoyment or the variety in the gym that I wanted to entertain or aesthetics. It was purely about develop this player to be an improved player on the pitch. So when I first started to look into a PT course, I had no idea how it worked, how long sessions were, the money that you could make, or anything else in between. Started PTing for, it's crazy, I used to charge £40 for 3-hour sessions.
I've been there spending, I used to charge £20 an hour for physio doing home visits when I first qualified, just because I was just trying to make a few extra.
All over the country.
Yeah, pretty much. Like it was certainly all like within a 30-minute radius of my house. Just like think of all the time that you spend, all the money in petrol, probably making about £5 in the end. It's mad, isn't it? Where we all start.
Got to do it though, right?
Yeah, got to do it.
And then, so I grew up in North London. So, I contacted a PT studio in North London, started coaching there, and it was half-an-hour sessions. So I might do 16 back to back. Probably do between 12 and 18 per day back to back, Monday through Friday. Try and limit any breaks to ensure that you're being efficient with your revenue. Clients would walk in, hey Charlie, how's it going? Cool, get you on the bike, little warm up. And then I put together a kind of 25-minute circuit to get you breathing, bit of strength training, minimal structure, primarily because the studio wasn't very big and there was 4 of us in there. So if I wanted the squat rack and it was taken, we're doing something else. 2 years of this, I quickly realized that a lot of the impact I was having with my clients who could have been a 20-year-old athlete or a 60-year-old lady who wanted to just be a little bit healthier and fitter, that the impact I was having was actually more powerful through the conversations and the mindset work. And that was quite unintentional initially. I was just very passionate about it. And that was when I first started to realize if someone's coming in, nailing their training, but nutrition is terrible, sleep's terrible, stress through the roof, no time for yourself, no hobbies outside of work, it's almost a means to an end. And it's like we can tick this box 10 times out of 10, but there are many other boxes that we're neglecting. But at that point then, so I'm 30 now, this would have been 9 years ago. The word wellness wasn't even part of my vocabulary. I just thought PTing was turning up, delivering a session, cool, see you next week, Charlie, or see you in a few days for our second session of the week. Over the period of 2 or 3 years of starting to just integrate these practices into my own life, such as breathwork, mindfulness, looking at nutrition. I was vegan for 8 years and really studying and researching areas that I wanted to kind of use myself as a guinea pig on. I realized that you can't run away from them. And for a long time, I implemented them into my own life, but I thought that stuff's not sexy. So I'm not really going to talk about it, as I'm not going to sell my services based off nutrition support or mindfulness support or stress resilience, because no one's going to buy that. They want to be in good shape, lose a few kilos and feel confident on the beach. But then I started to just integrate it a little bit with a few clients, and I was like, hold up, these guys are really keen on this. And they're telling their friends about me, but they're using the word mindset rather than fitness, or they're approaching me talking about improving their stress resilience as opposed to losing 2 kilos. And that for me was the real kind of like penny drop moment or penny drop year rather. There's more to this. And it's not saying that a coach that implements that is better than another coach, because that's not the way it is. But for me, that's the way I wanted to coach. And I knew the impact that I'd had on past clients already, talking about topics that were nothing to do with physical fitness and the benefit that it had to their life and also their overall health. Habit implementation was something like that you could skim past as a PT, or you could talk about in detail that could have equal or more impact than just going to the gym and hitting 3 sessions.
Because I guess to some degree, personal training often is someone bypassing the habit process. They're essentially outsourcing it or paying for it. They're paying for someone to have the habit for them. So there's this accountability that can be useful. It certainly can work. But what you're trying to empower is that they change everything in their life. They're not just turning up for a movement session, they're carrying on as they are everywhere else in their life. Because there's almost this idea of like, you can't outrun a bad lifestyle, right? You might be able to train a bit and improve your physical health, but if all the other things aren't there, your overall progress is limited.
100%. And something that I'm thinking about right now, I had a client called Tom, who I'll actually send this podcast to. He used to drive to the gym. It was in Muswell Hill, right? So like a lot of people would come from the local area. It's a very kind of residential area. He'd drive 2-3 minutes to the gym, park his car, walk in, often a minute or two late, leave, get in the car, drive home, have a shower, go to work. I was like, Tom, let's just pick a route between your house and the gym, and let's get you brisk walking from the house to the gym. We're going to do strength and then brisk walk back. And that became a jog, 30-minute strength, a jog, and then a run, 30 minutes and a run. And then it became almost 4K. And we started to lengthen the route that he would do to get to the gym. It cost him no more money. It cost me no more time. But he, after a year, was like, dude, my physical fitness and my aesthetic has massively improved. But also, I'm feeling much more empowered because we're setting these little milestones. We're starting off with a walk. Fast forward 3 months, I'm now running 4K 3 times a week, plus my sessions with you, which are now more structured, etc. And it's those habit changes that, to your point around using it as an accountability tool, if we can give them the crutch, but at a certain point start to remove it, or at least offer them the chance to consider their own kind of like accountability tools, for me, that's the real progression. And it's really empowering to be like, no one's here saying, get out of bed, dude, but I'm still getting out of bed and doing the thing, rather than having to have someone there almost like dragging you to the gym, dragging you through a session, and then saying, cool, see you next week. So I think your point around habits is just absolutely paramount for long-term progression inside and outside of fitness.
And if you've got this potentially a big chunk of your caseload at one point were people who did want to change their body for the beach, right? They did turn up saying, I want to look good on the beach, help me out for my holiday coming up. How likely is it you're going to get them to think differently? How easy do you find it, or what are the things you do in order to change their mindset around health and wellness?
For me, the word that I've been thinking about a lot recently is consider. Like, I want to offer you these tools and systems to consider. I'm not going to say you have to implement X alongside your physique goal, because I want to look good. 100%. I want to look good alongside the rest. But I'm not going to say to someone, forget about physique, because I think it's a very important thing. And it also is a representation of health if other boxes are ticked. And all that to say, I would start to offer different tools and systems that I think can fit into that person's lifestyle. For example, if you absolutely hate running, or you have a long-standing Achilles injury and you also hate cardio, I'm not going to say to you, you have to start running, but I'm going to say we need to do some cardio. Alongside the physique goal, these things will improve your health. And I think really understanding, like, what is that person's ultimate goal? Because if your ultimate goal is, yes, look great on the beach, but also go and do well at the parent sports day at school, for example, which was one of my clients' goals when I was in Muswell Hill, I was like, you're not going to get there with strength. So once I understand their goal, I can meet them where they are and help them to kind of forward think and backwards plan. And really like create almost stepping stones to get to a place that they want to get to, not the place that I want them to get to. And for someone who talks about reading James Clear's book, if they drop it in, straight away I'm like, cool, this person vibes with that kind of stuff. So I'm going to speak in a different way compared to someone that's not into that. And I think being a personal trainer or being a personal coach of any description, it needs to be relationship driven. And if I'm turning up, smashing a monster on the way to work, super tired, doing 10 sessions just for the hour and saying see you later, it's hard to build a relationship. If I'm spending time during that session trying to understand what your goals are, how we can break them down, what kind of person you are, what was your past, why are you actually training? Because you might think it's for a physique goal, but let's go a layer deeper. And it takes effort, but I also think that when you really ask the right questions and listen, you can realize pretty quick as a person, as a friend, but as a coach in this conversation, what's holding them back. And it's about painting their kind of ideal outcome, but through your systems that you've tried and tested. Whether they buy into it on day one is not the important thing, but you slowly nudge them towards it. And I think that's, in my opinion, the power of a really, really good coach. Yeah. All right. So you've in that really lovely explanation of basically why you give a shit, we've found coaching, right? Yeah.
versus personal training.
Yeah.
Personal training is being next to that person and training with them. Coaching is something else entirely, and you just described it perfectly there. It's understanding the person, creating a connection, driving them towards goals, individualizing a program, deciding on which thing you focus on first, and working with the person to do some shared decision making. That's essentially what you've described, which is lovely. Right now, it makes sense. Now it's like that's why you moved away from it. That's why you became more aligned with the coaching philosophy and picked up these other pillars. So let's explore those pillars in a little bit more detail then. So with movement, you're describing strength training, cardiovascular. You've got this flow session as well. Is there anything else within the movement pillar?
So I think the first thing to really establish between coach and client is like, what do you enjoy? So if someone loves, I don't know how you with your listeners, kind of the level of experience in the gym. If someone loves kettlebells, but they wouldn't have been maybe the first port of call for a particular movement, I'm going to find out a way, and I'm going to structure the program to ensure they're doing things that they enjoy, but also ticking the right boxes. Yeah. So I think everything filters down through like, what is their ultimate goal? What are these principles that I coach by that are tried and tested and kind of scientifically backed? And what time and resource they have available?
Can you summarize those principles?
With regard?
Some of those scientifically backed principles you were talking about.
Yes. So firstly, for example, with resistance training, and like from all the research that I've done, literature that I've read and kind of conversations that I've had, if we're not actively building muscle mass now, at a certain age when it starts to decline or when we start to get chronologically older, the chance of injury and the risk of ill health is massively increased. So whether someone wants strength training or not, I'm going to not make it clear to them, but I'm going to offer them loads of chances to understand. Consider, yes, that is absolutely imperative. And that can be, band work, bodyweight work, kettlebell, dumbbell, classes, open gym, whatever you like. But that's one principle. Cardiovascular, I'd put in 2. I'd put zone 2 and kind of like top end, but VO2 max specific work. So helping someone to consider and understand that we need to be doing some cardio that's conversational pace and giving them some metrics to use for that with regards to time and intensity, but also some kind of top line VO2 max. This is a tough session, but the benefits are exponential. And then the principle for flow work is more about joint stability. I have had many injuries, 2 knee operations, many broken bones, tears, slip discs, and throughout that whole period, the first part of the rehab obviously was just, start to create blood flow, but I would realize how my joints would just almost be like locked up. When I had a bad calf injury, I was in Airby for 12 weeks. My knee, hip and ankle was just kind of locked, it almost not fused together, but it felt like it's fused together. So implementing flow work, which depending on that person's body, their injuries, that's a really important part as well.
I really like this idea of flow work because you encapsulate all different types under one umbrella term, which sounds and feels right. That is what you're doing. Create flow within the body, get it to move the way it's designed to move. I've always found it a little messy with people. Oh, I prefer yoga, or I prefer this. Like, it doesn't really matter in the end. It's like you should just be moving your body freely with stability, with control in different ways, and there should be flow. I really like that term. I've not necessarily put it under that umbrella before, but I think that works well.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And it's something that I've slowly put together because a client actually asked me last week. I trained with an old client and we were sitting in the sauna a few days ago and we spoke about mobility. And he's like, this person says that you don't have to do it. And if you just do heavy squats, you'll mobilize your hips and ankles. And he says, on a Sunday, I just do an hour of mobility. And I said, habit building, from my perspective, if we talked about steps and someone said I could do 70k steps on Sunday or 10k a day, all day long, I'm saying 10k a day. You're getting natural light, you're getting headspace, you're building habits, etc. Same with mobility. Like if we can use the first 5 to 12 minutes of a session to find flow, depending on whatever your goals are, find flow in a way that you enjoy, rotate, move, reach, bend, hinge, all these kind of things hang over the course of the week. That could be between 50 and 75 minutes. It's such a small part of your day and you're going to get warm before your session somehow anyway. So rather than sitting on the bike for 10 minutes, can we just find flow? And even people who are really into like Ida Portal and locomotion, that kind of stuff, there's such power to moving that way because you've got to manage your breathing. When I'm trying to balance in this certain way or reach this hand to this foot, whatever it is, by default, you're mindful. I'm not thinking about that work project. I'm thinking, how is my hand going to reach here? So I always try and, stack as many benefits as I can into these small habits. And that's why I would say to someone, if you're going to walk on a treadmill, obviously go outdoors, get away from the aircon and the unnatural light, get some vitamin D, try and bring your lips together, go for some nasal breathing, and suddenly the benefits they're getting from that are quite profound and obvious rather than just ticking a box. So those are the three main pillars. And aside from that, it depends on what someone's injury history is. If you've got an extensive history of injury and we have to go kind of deeper down the prehab or rehab route versus someone who's really into skiing, like their training is going to be very different to someone who just wants to be fit and strong. So those are the three key kind of categories under that pillar, which is strength training in some description, cardio, which has 2 strands of VO2 max work, and then zone 2, and then flow, which again can be yoga, mobility, locomotion, and everything else in between.
Yeah, I really like it. And then that moves us into nourishment.
Nourishment / nutrition, yeah. So we've all heard many times before, you are what you eat. When I was younger, my mum said, eat the carrots you can see in the dark, and eat the crust, your hair grows thick or whatever. And I was really, really, really too obsessively into nutrition for a few years when I was vegan. I had really bad eczema. Used to work at Planet Organic, which is like a health food shop. One of the ladies was like to me, you should cut out dairy. Cut out dairy, eczema almost in less than 2 weeks, completely disappeared. And me being me, I was like, fuck it, I'm going to go the whole way and cut out meat as well, just because why not? And cut out meat, and for at least 2 years was like deep in the hole of fasting, green juicing, bioavailability, supplementation, and like all of these intricate areas. And at a certain point I realized like it's so overwhelming. Like I was super passionate about it, I had all the resources, but I had no idea what the priorities were. So that's why that for me is a really strong pillar, because what we can do right now is the most important thing. And underneath that pillar of nutrition / nourishment, we've got your macros, which I would always prioritize protein and having this is the minimum each day that I must hit. Calorie target, I'd go, this is the maximum I can hit each day.
Does this vary depending on the person?
For sure, yeah, depends on their goal and their experience with tracking and stuff. Then we've got hydration. So a simple formula that I often offer to people is between 30 and 40 milliliters per kilo body weight for hydration. And that's a good kind of like ballpark. Again, it's very easy to understand that and actually follow it.
So I'm a 75 kg. What is that roughly? 75 times 30.
For water?
Yeah.
75 times, that's 3, no?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
3.25, yeah.
Because I've never done the maths on it before, actually. I haven't ever been really specific. I probably drink quite a lot of water, but I wouldn't have ever tracked it. So I've not heard that calculation before. So about 3. Yeah, it kind of feels about right.
Yeah, and I'd say 30 to 40 milliliters, per kilo with electrolytes or some good quality sea salt. And again, it's like if you're sweating more, of course, you'd increase that. If you feel like you're going to the bathroom too much and your pee is, a light straw color and you're good with less, awesome. But once you have that locked in, again, that's a tool. So I'd say a gram of protein, good quality protein per pound of body weight for someone who wants to build muscle. Again, this is average, but if that can be a rough ballpark. And the hydration, so we'd have macros, we'd have micros, hydration, and then kind of like again, 2-strand is supplementation, and I put alcohol as well underneath nourishment. So depending on your exact goals and your experience, if you said to me, I've tracked meticulously for a year, I know you're super on it with nutrition. If you say, what's MyFitnessPal or what's Chronometer, for example, I'm not going to start saying to you, weigh out all your food, you've got 2 kids, you travel for work. We're going to build some principles into your life, such as every single meal that you have, when you sit down at the table for a meal, make sure you have 3 colors minimum. Cooked or raw, 3 colors minimum. That's a very easy concept to grasp. When I'm making my pasta at home, for example, you got some bolognese, some pasta. How am I going to get 3 other colors onto this plate? Rather than me saying to you, consume X number of fruit or veg per week. That's a very, very, very simple thing to implement. And then with supplementation, that depends on, again, someone's bloods, someone's particular goals, their experience, their health. But that's definitely further down the pecking order after we get the micros and macros dialed in. And then alcohol, again, depends on, does someone drink? What do they drink? What's their lifestyle? Why do they drink? And I think that's the one that requires probably most behavior change, because it's so ingrained with them. There are so many emotions attached to alcohol that for me, in my experience with a lot of my clients that travel and have a lot of booze with work, that's one that is a hard one to nail and it takes time. So I'll always start with what can I implement now? Could be the hydration, and then work on the pecking order.
Yeah, and by the sounds of it, you became quite obsessive over your nutrition. And is there a reflection that's come off the back of that as well, that actually that was too much?
Yeah, so it's a story I've told, a short story a couple of times. So I used to play football in Spain, obviously, right? Barcelona. And I think what kick-started this real hunger to learn about nutrition, pardon the pun, was when I had my first knee injury. Because I couldn't train, my mind was just like desperate for information. That's when I started to look into mindset work. Anyway, that's when I first understood about calorie tracking, like in detail. And this time I was sitting at a football match. I had my leg in a, I think it was propped up. I was just post-operation in my rehab phase. And I weighed out some almonds. Had the almonds with me in a separate bag, but then I had the bigger bag in my rucksack. Finished all the almonds, I'm watching the game, I'm sitting there, and I realize my mind is just thinking about these almonds. Like, I'm really hungry, but I finished the ones that I've weighed. The rest of them are next to my foot in my backpack, but I can't have them. And I'm trying to watch this game. It's two of my best friends playing football. And I couldn't get it out of my head. I'd get home, get onto Google, start researching calories, and that's when I realized, like, my relationship with food right now is very, very, very bad. And for that kind of 6-month period, I would be super restrictive during the week. I wouldn't say eating disorder, but I would say that for my size and shape, I was definitely under eating.
Disordered eating.
Come weekend, I would go on an absolute crazy binge. And this constant repetitive cycle of I'll start on Monday. Monday would come, I'd nail it till Friday, destroy myself, as in just eat whatever I could for the weekend, and then I'd start on Monday. And this became a cycle that I couldn't really get out of. And then my parents came over from London, my brother, and we were at a massive buffet restaurant. And it was a weekend. I ate a lot, super full. We were about to leave, and I was like, I'm just going to have a few more profiteroles. Ended up eating like a massive plate of them, got back to the hotel, and I was almost doubled over on the bed, and I had stomach cramps. And over that period, I really realized that the kind of like insatiable need for control over food was really putting me in a bad place. And that's why I'm very compassionate and empathetic with my clients now, with anyone now around food, because it's not someone who says like, just eat less and move more. I'm like, it's so rude to say, because it's like saying to an alcoholic, well, just don't drink, mate. Just don't put it to your lips. It's like, if it was that easy, dude, everyone would be in great physical, mental shape. So I think it's about, again, establishing what are the small for you, but in my head, they're big stepping stones we can start doing now. And a big philosophy of mine is, don't always think about subtracting. Sometimes in nutrition, think about adding. So if I add more high density, high volume, low calorie foods into your diet, there's going to be less space for other foods. Rather than me saying, put the suboptimal food away, let's introduce more high volume food, which by default keeps you fuller. And that's, again, a little tactic. So
yeah, so much of what you're talking about is about getting those small wins, those really manageable. I've come across this term a lot recently. This kind of low-hanging fruit concept. Like,
Totally.
What's the easy thing you can do today that makes a big difference tomorrow, the next day, and the next year? There's this real long-term approach about the way you're coming at this, isn't it? It's like you've completely grasped the reality that people don't necessarily need to be told what to eat. They need to know how to make this into a lifestyle change, and you're really grasping at that in a really interesting way. I think, given that you've spoken a bit about your history as a footballer, it's a nice chance to actually just explore that. So do you think some of your mentality around becoming the best coach you can be comes from that elite mentality there? Do you think it's sort of born out of that passion when you were younger to be the best footballer you could be?
It's something I think about quite often, because football kind of ended on my terms, but not on my terms. From 5-year-old ADHD kid running around, school was always tough for me. I got expelled twice, suspended multiple times. Not for being malicious or bullying. It was just more so that if my mind wasn't stimulated, I was going to wreak havoc. I was going to find one kid in the school who wanted to mess around at any given moment, and I was like, you and me are going to be friends today. And tomorrow I'm finding a new kid. And football became my release. My parents realized if Pele's playing football, he's disciplined, he enjoys it. And I had a massive respect for my coaches, but teachers at school, unless you earn my respect, I couldn't do anything you said. Couldn't and wouldn't. So I always had a great relationship with my coaches, and I realized from quite a young age that when I'm interested in something, I'm the most absorbent person in the world. If I'm not, I disregard it entirely. So I'd always be asking questions. I'd be, making notes in my head and also written. And then through football, I realized that it doesn't really matter how nice you are, how hard you try. You get championed for being a hard worker, but really, if you're not performing on the pitch, you mean nothing. And one particular occasion, I had a bad hamstring strain, like bad. Semi-final, we were in Andorra, semi-final game. I was on the bench. We all knew I couldn't play. Someone got injured. They put me on, went for a sprint, pop, big tear. And there was like such disregard for my well-being, because at that point I was like a pawn on the pitch just to have 11 men for the last 2 minutes. I went for one sprint or one sprint, and that was it. And all of these things, start to paint a picture in my head of, as an athlete, you are a person that has a place on the pitch, but everything else is quite irrelevant.
You're replaceable.
Exactly. The only thing that really gets championed is performance. And that really helped me to form a philosophy around myself of this. I call it AMWAP, as many wins as possible, rather than AMRAP, as many rounds as possible, AMWAP. Say you get to the end of a day on a Friday today, and it's been a really hard day, stressful, things haven't gone your way. You can still sit down and write down many things that went well. As simple as, took my supplements today, which for some people is something they just don't do because they're in the cupboard and they're stressed and they're busy. So helping clients move away from just performance-based goals and let's champion you for turning up and hitting 10K steps today. Or if you normally hit 6K, hitting 6.5K today, because these things cumulatively allow you to become the person that will then know how to hit 10 in time, rather than me setting the bar really high. You don't hit it, and I'm like, come on, man, just get more steps in, dude. That for me is not how it works, because when I was that person and I was being only champion for being perfect, it doesn't feel very nice. And that took a long time to realize, and also to translate into, I'm now a coach, and these people aren't performers. They're humans who want to perform well at life, but they're not getting on the pitch for 90 minutes to win a game. That's not what they're doing.
You're talking almost like a gratitude journal there. As many wins as possible. It's a gratitude practice to some degree, isn't it? Yeah, that's very interesting, because you're getting them to intrinsically feel the reward to then help with the habit formation again. If they can keep feeling good about it, because that's a really important part. You mentioned James Clear's book earlier, Atomic Habits. There's a big part of it is reward. There has to be a reward in order for it to become a bedded in habit. So by helping them learn how to give themselves that reward, more likely to stick. So yeah, it's smart stuff. So your career, by the sounds of it, almost shaped you in not so much a negative sense, but it gave you a few ideas about how not to be a coach as well, certainly for general population. How did it end in the end? I think you mentioned you had a couple of knee injuries.
Yeah, so it's quite crazy. So I tore my meniscus. Obviously, you're well acclimatized with what that means. For anyone who's not acclimatized listening now, knee cartilage, so bad tear. And that was about 7 months rehab. And really, if I wasn't an athlete, probably wouldn't have had the operation, or at least would have tried extensive rehab first. But the next day, I was booked in. The following week, operated, had extensive rehab, got back on the pitch, fought my way back up. Exact same injury, other knee, to the day, so a year to the day later, which is crazy, 12th of February. Surgeon was like to me, you're young, we can rehab you, get back on the pitch, but there's a high chance of re-injury due to the fact it's been the exact same thing on both sides. There's some predisposition to an injury there, etc., or a weaker area of the body. At that point, when I'm honest with myself, I kind of had enough. I realized moving to Spain from UK, I was strong, fit, hard worker, good on the pitch, but I wasn't a highly skilled player like the boys that were there from all over South America. And I realized, for me to really pursue this and want to be top of my game, it's not reality. And I can go pro for sure, but not the level I want to. And at that point, I realized that there's a lot of politics involved. Your body is just a tool that you use. And my interest started to kind of move away from just playing football. So I made the choice to move home. And that's when I came home. Didn't really know what I would do. I had no idea what I would do. All my friends at that point were smashing drugs multiple times a week, and that became my normal. And I had a great time. I think for a period of my life, I said it was really, really, really bad. And it was a negative time in my life, but also it's what I needed at that point. I was around good people, my great friends, never had a bad experience, touch wood. But that scene, good music, good people, the rave scene, for me, it was a really pivotal part of my life. At a certain point though, something bad happened, a little bit of low-level crime that my friends, well not friends, guys around me were involved in. I happened to be there, and that was a wake-up call. It was drug-related. It was them. I obviously didn't get any, I wasn't arrested or anything, but that was a wake-up call of you've turned up to this party, have no idea what's going on, zero inclusion. If something would have been different, you could now have taken the hit for something you didn't do. And that was a wake-up call of like, mate, you need to get out of the situation now. You need to remove yourself from this. And that for me was the first time I was like, I've got to be the architect of my own environment. Started going to Pure Gym, just saying to guys like, yo, I'm Pele, and just built friends at the gym. And that became my normal. So then 5 days a week, 6 a.m, I was PTing till 2, go home, lunch, and then spend 3-4 hours at Pure Gym with these guys. And slowly just started to recreate my environment. And then that's how everything else kind of like followed on with coaching and PTing, and realizing that being around people that do drugs 4 days a week for a year, your normal is doing drugs 4 days a week. Being around guys that go to the gym 4-5 days a week and then go swimming outside in cold water for a year, that becomes your normal. And when you're in that state, imagining something different is abnormal, obviously. So really trying to be the architect of that space. And I think you hear sometimes like, just sack off your mates if they're not in line with your, you know, your future self. And that's not me. But understand if the ratio is not working in your favor, then your normal is going to be skewed by their normal.
Yeah, this is super powerful, because it's often the reason people do struggle with application of the knowledge they already have. People on the whole do understand that they need to move more, sleep well, eat healthily, have the right mindset. You know, people kind of get that superficially. But if their environment is the opposite to that, or encourages them down a bad path, that's pretty tough, because if that is your friendship group as well, that is your community. So it's a real tricky situation for a lot of people to balance out. And I agree with you, actually, because I have heard that some people do have to cut everything off. For, like, let's say they have big addiction problems, and
of course,
and there's significant dysfunction as a result. I get that they have to entirely create a new environment for themselves, and perhaps cut people off that were or are important to them. I do feel there's an in-between for most situations. You don't have to cut a friendship off entirely. You just have a different relationship with that friend, with that person. Perhaps it's no longer about being at the pub. Perhaps it's about, I don't know, catching up in a different environment over a coffee less often. I think there is and this is something I've been mulling over in my own mind, because I've been very much involved in that rave scene, and many of my friends are very into those same things, right? I still see them all the time, and they're still really big parts of my life. But I'm not in the rave scene anywhere near as much. It's more like a couple of times a year that I really love going out, seeing a DJ I really love, because the music's great. So it's on my terms. Whereas it used to be just that same thing, like that weekend ritual of going down to the pub early, going to the rave, spending time with friends, waking up or going to bed in the middle of the next morning, and waking up at 3 PM. But that's like early 20s, when you're having these experiences and trying new things. I've still got the same friends, and most of them actually have followed the same path to me, that we just have a very different relationship with the rave nowadays, and you do it less often. But I think that's actually a thing I've not heard spoken about before, that you can sometimes do the in-between. There doesn't have to be this all or nothing approach.
I couldn't agree more with that. And let's be honest, like, you will have people in your life, personal and or professional, when you leave their presence, you feel invigorated, inspired, refreshed. You go and attack that project you've been putting off. Other people, by choice or not, that you leave and you feel like, oh, I'm deflated, I've got no energy, they've drained all my positivity for the day. I need to almost go and have a nap, or go and just recalibrate my my nervous system. I don't think it's arrogant to try and be the person that's inspirational to people around you. Not going in and saying, I'm better than you, come and do this with me. But if someone doesn't normally go for a walk, and you normally sit at the pub, let's say, bro, let's go for a walk around the park, grab a coffee. Say, let's meet at 4 PM rather than 9 PM. Because they're going to leave that interaction with you, and they're going to feel like, that's quite nice. Saw my mate, had a catch up, we laughed, we chatted, through normal stuff, we had a great time, it's been a couple of hours. But I haven't drunk, I've spent less money, I feel fresh. That person in 6 months could then be doing that more in their life. And I think also it's really important for us to remember that, again, not everyone starts somewhere to try and be like, this person's above this person. But if someone's friendship group never does that, why would they? And almost like helping people around you to understand, because when I was there, the idea of going for a cold dip in Serpentine at 7 AM, I'm just leaving fabric at 7 AM. But when you've done that, and you're getting the endorphins, and you're around good people, and you're feeling sharp for your day, suddenly it's like, oh wait, there is more. You know, you can still have great social connections. You can still have laughs, go out. When you want to go and rave, sweet, crack on. Like, I'm like you, now and again, fantastic. But when that is your life, it's hard to see past, you know, the end of your hand. So I think it's really important just to always be a good influence for yourself, because that rubs off on other people as well.
Well, yeah, what you've just said, it's not just be an architect for your own environment. You're being an architect for everyone else's environment around you. It's essentially, that's inspiration, isn't it?
100%.
Yeah,
Your vibe attracts your tribe. Yeah,
I really like that. And I guess we have ended up very nicely into mindset. So where have you got these ideas from? It sounds like you had some wisdom beyond your years quite early on. Was that just self-taught? Was it having a good mentor, or a bit of both?
Yeah, so when I had my first operation, up until that point, for the year and a half or so prior to that, you get a knock on the door. There's a dorm of 24 boys. I think it was 6:15. Wake up, breakfast, train, shower, study, nap. My life there was no time to think, because it's like you're doing this back to back to back to back, and you get one afternoon off per week. After the operation, I started to, again, just want to learn about different things, because I was just sitting in my bed all day and doing rehab at the physio clinic. And that's when I started to realize the power of mindset. I think by watching a few YouTube videos and podcasts, or probably not even podcasts back then, just YouTube. And I started to realize through this kind of research that I had a bit of power over the negative versus positive voice coming into my head about my injury. And it's almost this devil, an angel on your shoulder. Being conscious of that voice, being aware of it, and starting to kind of name that voice and understand that I can actually influence and implement positive changes into my life, into my thoughts actively. And that's when mindset was just like, again, for those years, I was super keen to learn about it. And then I got into like David Goggins stuff, and that the mind is the general and the body is the troops, is what a close friend of mine always used to say, you know, in the gym. He's like, when your mind says go, the body has no choice but to follow. And I think there's a level of toxic positivity, but within reason, the mindset or your brain is what steers the ship. So got diagnosed with OCD when I was probably, I haven't even talked about it actually before on a podcast, 21. And not in OCD, often people say, oh, you know, I like things neat, I have OCD. And I think sometimes we have to be careful, because it's a lot more than that, as I'm not sure how familiar you are with it. But for me, it was very internal, and it's like obsessive and compulsive thought patterns. I always knew I had ADHD from young, never got diagnosed. And then last year, my brother got diagnosed. And I was like, and he's the opposite to me, he's super calm. I was like, I'll get one. I knew I had it. And obviously I had it, flying colours.
You passed.
Yeah, passed test, exactly, A-star distinction. But all through that process, I just, you know, everyone's got things going on. And I think the word spectrum, by proxy, we're all on it between 0 and 100. You know, I think people say now, I have this, I have that, I have that. Everyone's got stuff going on. Some of it's labeled, some of it's not. And I think the label it can help some people. Like, it helped me, gave me some answers, but also it can also be detrimental and put you in this box of like, I have this thing, so now I'm going to function like I have this thing. All that to say, the mind is a tough place to be when it's not working in your favor. It's not tangible. Right now, you could be sitting smiling opposite me having a coffee, but inside you could be in a very negative place, or you could look quite negative, but inside, you know, you're super calm and you're collected and you're happy, etc. So I never try and judge my clients. I never try and, you could put a smile on the face on a Zoom call in a session, and there could be a lot going on beneath the surface. So I try and be open and vulnerable as much as I can, whilst also I want to be a positive influence, you know, and on days that I find things tough, I'm still getting out and trying to do as much positive shit as I can, because my philosophy, you know, take it or leave it. On a certain day on this planet, it's the last day I'm waking up. Could be tomorrow, 50 years from now, like, for many reasons that are in and out of my control. And I'm going to have a good time on the planet. And I think life is super precious. And if we're not putting conscious time and effort into improving our mindset, nurturing it, being the architect of our environment to provide it with positive influence, then we're setting ourselves up for failure. So I think it's really, really important to, like, I went to a silent retreat when I was about 22 or 23, a Buddhist retreat. Nothing. There's no mirrors, no books, no clocks. There's nothing. You just 3 days, meditation, and just zero. The mind wants to be calm. That's what I've started to realize. The mind wants to be at ease and relaxed and collected. But when we just force yourself to absorb sounds, colors, stress, the news, social media, more this, more that, more that. It's obviously going to be hectic. And that's why a big part of this mindset pillar is the mindfulness piece and the breath work, meditation, time alone, nature. Without putting time into that, I think it's very hard as a human to have a calm, collected mind, because the world is stressful and life is hard.
That's another Buddhist speak, isn't it? You know, life is suffering.
Yeah.
How did you find that silence retreat then? Was there, you sounds like you've realised that it's a good thing, but is it immediately a good thing, or is there some stress that comes with the silence to begin with? You mentioned also ADHD, OCD. Does that just immediately go, hang on, what the hell is going on here? I'm so used to this. Or is there like a craving for it?
I think there's two answers to that. I think one answer to that is that solitude is hard. Partly because it's foreign, and partly because you can't hide. You know, and it's very different going out for a run without your earphones for headspace and sitting in a room for 6 hours with no noise, no clocks, the walls are grey, no one's looking at you. So it's hard because you literally cannot hide. Like, your insecurities come to the forefront. You kind of go through like years and years and years of thoughts very quickly because there is no distraction. Like for me now, when we were sitting in this room before, if you and your videographer would have left the room, my instinct would have been grab my phone to just do something. And that's a small example of how you can be mindful. But like, no, just leave my phone over there and just breathe for a few minutes. In that silent retreat, you have no option but to just be. And when I arrived, people were leaving on the bus that we arrived on, leaving on that bus after a 21-day retreat, and they just looked spaced out as hell. And I think for me, that would be too intense. And that was no eye contact and no speaking. So it's not something that I think is a, fix all, but having that gave me the 100% confirmation that I wanted to have smaller parts of that in my days and weeks going forward. And it's hard sometimes, like when life is busy, I don't want to stop for a single second. My brain's like, do more. But I try and make the effort to just step back and be like, Pele, chill. Nothing is as important as you think it is. Just relax for like a few minutes and then crack on. Like the email can wait, the WhatsApp can wait, this can wait, chill.
I'm very guilty of this. I love being busy. And it's probably not that I love being busy. I love the grind and the drive towards performance. You know, you were saying earlier about achieving, and I know it's not good for me in the end. Like, I'm young enough, healthy enough, I'd probably get away with it more than I would, say, in another 10 years. And I know the solitude also suits me really well. I know that when I do get those little pockets of time, whether it is out on a run or whether I'm just on holiday and I can chill for a bit, I know it's really good for me too. So that's a real take home for me, is I need to really focus on what's good for me, which is that solitude. And maybe I need that experience. Maybe I need to go on some form of silence retreat or just create that environment for myself. But yeah, I think that's a real take home for me.
Yes, I think it's really powerful. And I actually went on 2 retreats last year in Wales, very different, not silent retreats, but I've had therapy for a long time on and off, sport therapy, psychology, way back in Spain over the years. And some of them have been better than others. But over the last year, I've really come to grasp this concept of like group coaching, group therapy, I think can oftentimes be more powerful. And the guy, Alex, who runs the retreats, you might know him, Alex, really powerful guy. He said to me once, he was saying that when you're in a group of people and it's like one person speaks at a time, so you don't get interrupted, you're forced to articulate, and someone says, how are you feeling? Or why are you here on the retreat? You're forced to articulate in very clear terms what's going on. And often you can have this whole, like this kind of, I call it like a blender of thoughts in your head, and you think you know what's going on, but because you haven't articulated it to the world, as in verbally, it's hard to understand. When you explain things to someone, like, teaching is the best form of learning, you're forced to structure your thoughts and articulate things in a way that makes sense to the world, which helps them make sense to you. And I really found that in these experiences, which weren't silent, but it was getting out of London for 3 days in Wales, ideally no tech, having good conversations. And you realize that like we could talk for 2 hours in the morning over coffee and it's like only 10 o'clock because you have so much time. Whereas in London, we're used to saying the world moves so quick. Today's going, well, yeah, because you're running on a train and then you've got a call and you're doing physio and you're doing this. But when you haven't got tech and you haven't got distractions, days are fucking long. We go for a 3-hour hike, have a long lunch, have a 2-hour chat, have a nap, and it's like 1 p.m. And you're like, what shall I do now? And you end up, or I felt that in that environment, you ended up really articulating things because there was no rush, there was no distractions. So whether it's like a silent retreat, obviously is very solo, which is quite extreme for some people, or it's like a retreat of some sort, other people that are similar to you, again, architect of your own environment. Getting in that environment with people who are fairly similar to you is going to be shared values. And that could be something that for someone who's struggling to, find their tribe is very powerful. Because if I'm taking 3 days out of work, out of London life, to get on a train to Wales for 3 days and stay in a yurt with no phones, and you are, there's going to be shared values there. So straight away, you feel safe, you feel accepted because people are similar to you. And there's some people that I've met there that now are really close to me, and I've seen them multiple times. So if I didn't have a tight circle of good people in my life, I would have that now through other experiences.
Do some of these concepts around mindset, do they also cross over into this idea of restoration? Because you very deliberately use restoration and not sleep. So this concept of sort of non-sleep activities or non-sleep deep rest, does that come under the mindfulness as well sometimes, of having the space to mentally recharge, recover and rest?
Yeah, there's crossover from all of them. Like eating a meal without your phone is mindful, right? But that's under a separate kind of pillar. I think the reason I've gotten 4 pillars is to make it really clear, to create tick boxes under each one for each client, so they can kind of really in their head work out where things sit. And there's always going to be crossover, but putting conscious effort into time alone for your mind versus creating time in the day just because you're walking to the station, for me is quite different.
Yes.
And I try and help people to understand that you haven't got to take 3 days out of London to be mindful. You could literally walk to the station and grab a coffee, but not have any music in your ears. Maybe have your earphones on, noise cancelling, so you're in your own little world for 10 minutes. On the 2 mornings of the week, you don't take your son to school or you don't start work early, because you're going to get on the train and the temptation is going to be grab your phone, but you might then be calm enough to, I'm just going to sit here and just observe people, just think for half an hour. You're now getting to work for that big meeting with your boss or coworker, and you've had an hour of just you time, rather than you rush to the station, grab a coffee, listen to a podcast, get on the train, reply to 3 emails, walk quickly to work, sit down at the meeting. You're all over the gaff. And it's like, how a day starts generally is how a day goes. So I think having separate times of solitude that are mindset focused, and then just creating mindful activities in white space or pockets of white space in your day, crossover, but one's more intentional.
I'll probably group in. So I read every day in the morning and quite often in the evening as well on the train. I see it as a treat. I see it as my time. I want to do it. It's my learning time. And everyone complains about the commute. I bloody love it because I get to read my book.
I think exact same.
I absolutely get so much from it, and like I even get a little reward. Like sometimes you were saying earlier about these wins for the day. If I finish a book and I marked it and I'm like counting up the books I've read in the year, like it seems silly, but that to me is like, that's a performance goal in a way.
Yeah.
I've read this many books, and as a result, I've learned this much knowledge, and I feel great about that. So there's lots of different ways that I see that sanctuary of time for me as so beneficial. And I would never want to have I would never want to stop commuting by train in a way.
For that reason.
I've even started to Audible now because I'm seeing my commute in my bike as well. I do a little bit 15-minute cycle. That's either a podcast or an audiobook. So it's just that nice little enjoyable time to not be thinking about work, to not be thinking about the family, to not be thinking about the weather or whatever it might be. It's like my time.
Something I'd add to that as well is, I think we can all say with confidence, when we're calm, collected, well-fed, well-rested, we deliver a better service to the world. And I'm not here to talk about you must be at service, expensive, all else, but be at service, be a good person, bring your best. Whether that is fueled by your ego or fueled by a side of you that wants to just help and offer you to the world, prioritizing these things means you're a better person. And what I mean by that is that if you're well slept, you are then going to offer a better service at work, which means you can get a raise, which means you can have more influence, be a better leader, be a better communicator, be more present for your partner, have fun with the kids. You know, whatever your mission and purpose in the world is, when these boxes are ticked, there's a direct ROI. And often they're free. You know, like getting on the train for you, there might be 17 emails waiting, and there might be 34 WhatsApps, and there might be 3 Slacks and this and that. But how important are they versus what you just said? Having half an hour, I'm the same, sit with my Kindle or book, and it's like, it sounds weird saying it's a treat, but it's like, it's nice now. Sit when you get a seat, it's even better.
Yeah.
So
I like it so much, I'll literally read standing as well, right? Even when I'm squeezed in like a,
You're like
sardine, I'm like flicking a page, I can just about see one page, you know?
Do you meditate? As in actively sit down and...
On and off. I've struggled to get my routine for it. I've spoken quite a few times recently on this podcast. The conversation goes there quite often, and it's one of the things that I've struggled to turn into habit. I've tried a few times, and I get a few days in, and it drifts, and I try again a few days, and it drifts. It's certainly one of the things that I know will improve my life, and it will make me sharper. It will help me with that that conflict that I know I have of craving busyness, of craving like work and performance and achievements. I know that if I take more time out, it will actually have a more positive impact on those things anyway, because I'll be more energized and fresher and more present. It's just a case of building that habit, actually.
What's the main blocker? Is it time? Is it...
I can say time, but I know it's not true. I can say I don't have enough time, but I can always create my own time. I am the architect of my day, as you would say. So I've tried a couple of times of blocking time for it, and it drifts, and there's things that are happening. And I'm probably at quite an influential stage within our business at the moment, where there's lots of different things that I am having to run myself, and as a result, the time thing maybe is a bit more relevant for now. As the business grows and more people will start to take on those responsibilities outside of me, then for sure my time will absolutely clear up, and there'll be more opportunities to do this. So what I'm trying to do now is, at least on my non-clinical days, is find little blocks of time make blocks of time to have this downtime, actually.
Yeah,
that's where I'm moving towards. I've already figured out now a way of, so I'll be doing 3 days clinical, 2 days non-clinical. Those 2 days I can definitely make that time available to practice breathwork, mindfulness. That is my aim.
To extract from there something the last sentence you said there, just around for those 2 days, particularly I coach mainly men, right? So many of the men that I coach have busy lives, right? And there's this conversation that I find myself having with a lot of people, a lot of men primarily, around when X, I will X, thinking that they have to have like a perfect week or month or year to start anything. And even to your point there, it's like on those 2 days, you can have half an hour. Even if it's one morning a week that someone can sit down and have a coffee in the morning without any distraction, that's going to quickly become your favorite morning of the week, as opposed to the next 3 months manic with this project at work. So I'll do 5 mornings a week from July 2025. And someone asked me the other day what one of the biggest misconceptions is, from my perspective, for men who are looking to just get more well, get healthier, fitter, stronger. And I think the biggest misconception is you have to go all in. Because to your point around that, it's so simple to start something that's like minuscule and takes almost no time or effort. Now, get some sort of ROI, build a habit, and it feels good. If you've got a little book and you tick for 5 days in a row, you've done a habit, it feels phenomenal. Or 5 weeks, you do it once a week, it feels fantastic. And going all in is this like Project 50, 75 hard, David Goggins. If you can do it, sweet, crack on. But if you can't, there's still something you can do. And that's something that I hear talked about all the time.
Yeah, it's like the dipping your toe in the water concept. Just dip your toe in the water, see how it feels, see how you get on with it. Because at the moment, clearly my life isn't ready for an all-in mindfulness breathwork practice. It's just not ready for it. And I am therefore not ready with it. So to force it wouldn't work. And I have tried to force it a few times and it hasn't fit and it hasn't worked out. So there certainly is this dipping my toe in the water idea now that seems to be there seems more chance of it working. Mm-hmm. What else have we missed within the restoration pillar? We haven't covered that in as much detail.
So with sleep, quality and quantity. So there's a lot of research around sleep, and actually I might have been on one of your podcasts even around, there's a certain gene where some humans can thrive on very little sleep. I thought that was me for a long time. I got very used to, I got out of bed at 4:30, 5 to 6 days a week for more years than I care to share, but a lot of years, probably 5, 6, 7 years. And I got used to being just super tired the whole time. Caffeine was a big part of my life. I would not have a moment in the day that I could sit down and not fall asleep. I'd get on the tube and I have to be on my phone to not fall asleep. My barber was like to me, dude, like, are you ill? Because every week I'd get in the barber's chair, big up Nebby, my barber. We'd talk for 2 or 3 minutes, and then I'd just doze off. And he'd be like, Pele, mate, wake up. And that happened for like over a year. So quantity of sleep is one thing. And that is something that I kidded myself for a long time, that I can get, deep restorative sleep for like 4.5, 5 hours, and I can function, because I did for a long time, but clearly not well. And for sure there would have been implications on my health in that time that hopefully now are in the past. 7 to 9 hours, get as close as you can to 8 hours, in bed with the lights off. If you can't fall asleep for an hour, cool, you're still resting. Horizontal, heart rate's coming down, it's dark. So depending on where a client's at, I just try and say, let's increase by 15 minutes a week.
That's really interesting what you just said there, because on average I do fall asleep quickly, and sleep has never been a big deal. But let's say once a week, maybe once every couple of weeks, it takes me up to an hour to get to sleep. And when I look at my Whoop data, because I'm still resting laying down, it often categorizes it as sleep, light sleep. It calls it light sleep. So I know I'm awake because I remember rolling around and going, I'm not quite there yet, but I'm resting enough for it to be categorized as sleep. So I think that's, sometimes we forget that, and we think that just because we're not actually asleep is not beneficial. And that's often the kickback I get from people as well. Oh, if I go to sleep at this time, it takes me, an hour or two to actually fall asleep. But that's still rest. That's to your point of restoration versus sleep.
Massively. So quantity, if you can get 9 hours, then hit 9 hours. I think, there's a lot of talk around circadian rhythm. Getting up at the same time, in my experience, is better and more sustainable than trying to go to bed at the same time. There's more variables the night before, and it could be work, dinner, kids, whatever. But if you can get up at the same time every single day, or at least 5, preferably 6 days a week, you'll find a rhythm. And that first week might be tough. You're going to be tired a few days. But once the rhythm, you'll wake up at that time within 5 or 10 minutes without an alarm. And there's a lot of research behind this and the benefits of. And it just gives you, okay, if I get up at 6:30, that's just your rhythm of how you start the day. So quantity and then quality, there are many ways obviously for us to look at that. But I would say 3 things. Buy an eye mask. Ensure your room is cool, whether that's a fan or windows open, and earplugs. Even if someone says, no, I don't wake up in the night, I don't need earplugs, the noises outside could start to limit your quality of sleep and move you from deep to light sleep. So if we can invest, one can invest in an eye mask, earplugs, and ensure their room is cool, that's going to massively improve the quality of your sleep. And then also just different tools. You might love falling asleep to a podcast. I might love reading a Kindle for 10 pages. You might have some relaxed music. They're one of many ways, but trying to improve the quality of your sleep is a game that we have to play over the long term. And things change. I haven't got kids. If I did, then there are different variables there, for example.
Sure are.
Yeah, you can tell me exactly. Yeah, I'm sure many.
Yeah, and there's an acceptance of, right, this period is going to be rough, and you get through it. But actually, it was probably the point in my life where I learned to value sleep more than ever, because of that week or two after your kids sleep for the first time. You cannot believe how much better you feel. You do get into that point of kidding yourself, like you were in. You were saying you were in that period for a while. You go, God, I'm coping. I'm actually not too bad here. And then you get that week or two of consistent better sleep, and you're like, oh my God, I feel better.
Yeah.
And there's not many people on this planet that who are sleep deprived who then get better sleep don't say the same thing.
Yeah. It's torture.
And it is a form of torture as well. So,
yeah.
That's essentially what goes on. But it's such a clever trick that our brain plays on us that it kids us into thinking that we're doing okay.
Massively. And also we're creatures of survival. So if I slept 4 hours a night for the next week, I'd survive very badly. But if you found a way to ensure I didn't fall asleep, I would still be here.
Yeah.
every marker, biomarker, everything that you could test would show that I'm in a state of survival. But I'm not sure if you can relate to it, maybe differently if it was through work or kids for you. I started to crave that. I'd almost want to go to bed. I'd want to wake up and feel, it sounds kind of sadistic to say, but I'd look forward to being tired, because for me, it was a badge of honor in my own head. Like, you've had an average of 4 hours and 2 minutes sleep over the last week, and you're still doing 12-hour days. And it's like, mate, like, wake up. What are you doing? And also, I'd batter myself in the gym multiple times a week. So to go back, yeah, quality and quantity of sleep, those two in equal measure, but the one that's normally easier to improve immediately is quality, purely by investing in an eye mask or earplugs. And I've got like a 3-2-1 rule to try and have your last meal 3 hours prior to bed if you can. 2 hours, no phone or work or stimulation. And then 1 hour if you can, no liquids, just to ensure you're not going to the bathroom too much. Again, a simple tool someone can implement. I don't get it every single day at all. Phone, I never have my phone in my bedroom. That's like maybe once a month if I'm working late or whatever, but very rare. The meal one for me is hard. To eat by 7:30 is tough.
That's tough for me as well, because my natural cadence of eating tends to be that I start eating in the middle of the day. It's just when my appetite starts. But in the evening, I'm really hungry, so I'll have dinner, and then another couple of hours later, I'm really hungry again. So
have something else.
I tend to eat quite late, but when I check my Whoop scores, it doesn't impact it very much. So it's the kind of thing that suits me and probably will stick. But I agree that some people will always say, if I eat late, I feel horrible and I sleep really badly. And luckily that isn't me, so I can get away with the way it works for me. But if that's you, then that's something to learn, isn't it? And I think your 3-2-1 rule probably works really well for those people.
Yeah, what you just said is so powerful, because like, I've worn the Whoop on and off for 4-ish years. Something that people need to really understand is that if you have a Whoop or any device that tracks any health metrics, and you are given clear explanation as to what improves or does not improve your recovery, but don't act on it, it's kind of silly. Whoop's like, what, 30 or 40 pounds a month, right?
It's less than that.
Less than that, okay, but Whoops, you're still paying for it. And if someone knows for a fact, every time I drink alcohol, my recovery is terrible, but they don't act on it, it's like, why are you wearing your Whoop?
I've heard a better one.
Go on.
I'm going to be drinking this weekend, so I'm going to take my Whoop off so I don't see it.
Yeah. I went out on a long time ago, a 2-day, it was a big celebration, and my Whoop was at 1% for like 4 days. I wish I would have taken it off. But I think the Whoop gives us so much data. Like, if you use a journal function, whether it's...
That's what I use, yeah.
Sharing a bed, how you're feeling, your like, there's so much data. It's so clear to know, if I do high intensity training after 6 p.m, my sleep's terrible. Well, then try and move that session if you can to the first block.
That's the idea, right? Yeah.
Otherwise, what are you paying for?
So the two main ones that I learned, and I've had it for nearly 2 years now, is alcohol, for sure. So I now drink a lot less alcohol, still enjoy it, but it's on my terms now, rather than just this kind of, it'll be fine in the end, I'm healthy enough to get away with it. I definitely don't get away with it. 3 or 4 days, it's my score is in the red, and it gradually creeps up. So alcohol is something I use a lot less, and sleep consistent wake time, actually. So consistent wake and bedtime, that's another thing that's really powerful for my score. There's other things that I sort of knew already. There's what are some other ones? So actually, meat eating didn't change anything. So I'm flexitarian. So I eat a lot less meat than I ever used to for the last 7 years. Whether I eat meat or not makes no difference to my Whoop score. So that was quite an interesting one. So for me, it's an ethical choice rather than a health choice. But some of the others were relatively obvious. Actually, training was another one. You said there, late exercise does affect me negatively as well.
Me too. It's obvious though, right?
Socializing. So if I socialize, whether I have alcohol or not, it negatively impacts my score because I'm an introvert. So actually, it's still worth it for me overall. But I know that if I need to spend more time recovering the day after if I'm socializing. So there was a few interesting ones I have learned from, and there's some others that are like, yeah, that's kind of obvious.
That's really interesting. And I think I had this term ages ago, like a stress pot, and the body physiologically is not always sure, why is Charlie stressed? Is it because the kids are going manic? Is it because you had a really busy day at work? It's just stress, and on the Whoop, it's strain. But that's a powerful tool, because if you know, for example, that going out for a 4-hour social event plus 2 big meetings plus a podcast plus these things, you know in your head, okay, that's a very stressful day. Tomorrow, let me ensure I'm not 9 hours back to back in clinic. Exactly. So at least you know. And stress isn't a bad thing, but if we're stressed with no recovery, of course, something's got to give. And from my experience, that's often where we can learn to survive. But the thing that takes the hit is what you can't see, which is between your ears. And that's when, like for me, ADHD is much worse when I'm underslept, overcaffeinated and stressed. So I know if I look at my diary, it's a mad week. I'm looking at where I can recoup some time for me and distribute my energy accordingly. Otherwise, everything, I don't know the word worse, everything is more exacerbated.
Yeah, amplified.
Exactly, yeah.
As we're just approaching the end here, what other concepts or ideas or any other key messages you'd like to get across to the listeners that maybe summarise your approach and a bit about you?
A big one for me is private victories, which is, it's in the name, behind closed doors, who are you? We can all walk out to the world guns blazing, be super productive, tick off the right boxes in front of people when we're getting championed for it, when there's an audience, as it were, whether it's 2 eyeballs or 1,000 people. But behind closed doors, who are you? As simple as supplements in the morning. Are you the person or brushing your teeth? Do you, like, for example, if you're 2 minutes brushing your teeth, do you skip it at minute 30 because you're in a rush most days of the week? Do you skip taking your supplements? Do you skip the last set? When you're doing a 12-minute conditioning piece, do you do 11.5 minutes and think, fuck it, I'm done? Because from my experience with all my clients, the only way to build true confidence is through building your self-reputation, trusting yourself, and that comes from private victories. Starting off with things that are really small, you know, making your bed is one that's talked about a lot. It's simple, but not everyone does it. Wake up, make your bed, cold water on the face, brush your teeth, get some natural light, then go on your phone. I could tell you that I do that, but then wake up in bed and be on Instagram in 3 minutes. Because when I tell you, you probably think, oh, nice man, I'm going to use that one. Or you might feel inspired. But private victories and daily deposits, super important. And aside from that, I would just reiterate that you don't have to go all in. Like, I'm not totally sure on the demographic and the age and the experience of your listeners, but I went all in for a lot of years. Didn't do me any favors. Like, I thought I'm just going to be this guy who goes ham 8 days out of 7, and it put me in a more negative place rather than positive. So try and come away from social media. I unfollowed everyone about a year ago for 6 months, and my whole mindset changed entirely because we're inundated by everyone showing us that their life is better than us. They're more disciplined, they're more productive. Focus on you. Your private victories, go at your pace. If you can go all in for a week and you want to, sweet, but you don't have to. So start where you are, do what you can, and win behind closed doors.
I'm going to ask you, although I think you have just answered it, what does better never ends mean to you?
Good question. I should have prepped this one.
Well, it sounds almost like you've just said it. So it's throwing you under the bus a little bit here. But do you have anything else to add for the concept of better never ends?
Yeah, I think I would say maybe a little bit off piece, but I'd say life is super precious. And rather than me trying to be better than you or him or her, just try and be better tomorrow than you are today in any way that you can, and celebrate the wins along the way, because we're here for a long ride.
Pele, how does someone find you if they're looking to work with you or learn a bit more about you?
Best way is Instagram. So Pele.Zac, Pele.Zac. Hit me up. Any questions, anything you want to talk about, I'm an open book. And I've got a lot of men's community events coming up. If you're into health, wellness, fitness and community, get in touch if you're a man, and I'll let you know where the next events are. And thanks for having me. That was a great conversation.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to today's podcast. This podcast is sponsored by Better, provider of health and wellness services in central London. We really believe that we can help people feel better and live better. You can book in for face-to-face services at any of our 3 London clinics. We have one in Marylebone, one in Soho, and one in the city. You can also follow us on Instagram at Better Never Ends, or head over to our website for more information about the clinics or the podcast at www.betterneverends.com.